to Cause Before Symptom, uncovering the real cabal and spiritual forces that are controlling the world. And now, here is your host, James Carter.
Yes, it's that time again. November 18th, 2025. It is Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carter. Guys, welcome. It is good to be here. Tonight's topic is all about the Dragon of Light, how Photonic AI overthrows Babylon and builds the beast. Let me give you just a quick overview of what this is going to be about so you guys, don't start yawning because it sounds like a technical title. But what we're going to be talking about is the difference between electricity CPUs or computer chips and light or photon CPUs. One has been dominated by the West, and the other, well, it's brand new and it's coming out, and it looks like the East may actually get their claws into the future. So I believe that China is betting everything on photonic computer chips, which are lighter, faster, they don't heat up, and they take less energy. And China already has a 10-year jump on everybody else. And that's what's going to change the world. And this is where the beast system is going to start. And that's what they wanted. That's what the Bank for International Settlements wanted. Shout out to everybody on the live chat Rumble. Number one warrior is Scorpion saying, hey, y'all. What's up, Scorpion? I believe that's Christopher. How you doing, buddy? Number two warrior is Boots saying, hey, it's learning time. Hello, Pastor James of the Airwaves, creator of Elite Potion Detoxifier. Yes, pick up your Elite Potion today on elitepotion.com. This is a supplement product that I own and I sell, and it gets rid of heavy metals and parasites. And I'm telling you, this stuff is like taking ivermectin, but even better. Thank you for that, Boots. And Boots also says, hello, warriors and new listeners. Let's hit that thumbs up button to get the show up in the ratings. Yes, thank you. Rumble will not give me any credit unless you hit the like or thumbs up button. Now, of course, if you like the show, please do. Please don't feel like you have to do it, but it would really help the show. If you learn anything from this, the least you can do is give it a like to, tithe your way to get this show out there if you really think it's that important. I do. But it's up to you. So, number three warrior is Sheila saying, sup, Buttercups. What's up, Sheila? And Boots did the dancing banana. You can just stare at that all day. And Robert Gertison is here stating, hey, made it here to get my daily mind blown. Thank you. I appreciate that, Robert. That's what I'm hoping to achieve, is to blow everybody's mind. All right, let's get into shitty, crappy, breaking news.
Welcome to Shitty Breaking News with your host, James Carter, offering his shitty opinion.
Yes, so after House vote to release Epstein files, the Senate agrees to send the bill to Trump. We ain't gonna pass in the House. Now we're gonna send it to the guy who's on that list. On that list. I don't know what's going on, but I can definitely tell you Q is not in charge, and eating popcorn is stupid if you care about your country and you care about living in America and you care about stomping corruption. So, yeah, we all know that Trump was on the Lolita Express. The guy was on 13 times. And I've got pictures and pictures of old pictures of Trump, kissing little girls, and he's a pedophile. So don't buy into it. He's a Satanist. He's a Luciferian. He's a high-ranking Freemason, and he's working for the Orsini family to steer America where the Bank for International Settlements needs it to go to fulfill their prophecy, because those bankers that run the world are religious. That should piss you off. Because, as the world has fought to keep religion out of schools and keep religion out of politics and keep religion out of governments, well, they never went to the source, the fucking bankers. But what do I know? Things happen, says Trump, as he defends the Saudi king prince as they killed a reporter in their country. So apparently, a Saudi prince killed a reporter called Khashoggi, and Trump's like, "Hey, things happen." Well, you know, BBC wants you to go, oh, you got to hate Trump so you can hate more people. Don't buy into it. The left and the right are still working for the Bank for International Settlements. Sorry, but that's the truth. They control East and West. Texas appeals ruling that Trump urged voting map is racial gerrymandering. Racial, really? I don't know. I don't care. These politicians will do anything to stay in power. And that means they'll be racist too if they have to. That's just them. I wouldn't do it, but that's what they do. Republican fail in vote to oust Stacey Plaskett from the House Intel over Epstein files. Don't worry, she'll be outed. House rebukes Democratic Republican Chai Garcia for succession scheme. Who gives a shit? Fear spreads as federal immigration crackdown in North Carolina expands. Oh my God. I mean, they really want us to continue to hate each other over immigrants. Yeah, they do. And that's shitty breaking news. When we come back, tonight we're going to be talking about the Dragon of Light, how Photonic AI overthrows Babylon and builds the beast. Coming up right after this short commercial.
I'll give you $10,000 if you can find just one person who's never filed a tax return.
I'll give you $10,000 if you can find just one person who's never filed a tax return.
Have you ever filed a tax return? Yes.
Nobody. Not one. It starts at 16. That first job, that first form. The moment they became a taxpayer. Every April 15th, millions keep signing the same contract, thinking it's the law. But it isn't the law that binds them. It's the signature. 98% of Americans never owed it. Learn more at unincorporatedassociations.com.
Stop signing that shit. That's what I'm saying, man. The unincorporation deal is real and it's legal. And what's going to be interesting is I don't know what Kirk and his people are going to do when and if Congress, the House, and then Senate, and then Trump signs off on this new bill that's coming out. It's really small. It's only got 150 pages so far. And the bill basically switches from us paying the IRS an income tax to a standard 30% tax rate on all goods and services in America. So a sales tax. And I'm telling you, the sovereignty movement, as I've been telling you guys over and over, the moment that we wake up, they switch tactics, and now they're going to get their money because you got to buy shit. And that's how they keep us in control. So it doesn't matter, where we go or what we do. It catches up with us. And the billionaires know this, and they write in these little bylaws that allow them to ship their money offshore and back, and they profit off of you not understanding the law or understanding what corporations are, or what a country is, and the differences between them. That's just how it is. So let's just stop crying over spilled milk. The Dragon of Light, how Photonic AI overthrows Babylon and builds the beast. It's going to be a long show, so hunker down. This is the fall of the Silicon Babylon. Now, they told us that the future would belong to silicon, that the world would rise or fall on the speed of electrical circuits, on the heat of GPUs, and on the faith that we placed in the Western tech priesthood that built their towers on sand and called it progress. Now, for decades, Babylon wrapped itself in the illusion of performance. Its banks declared themselves immortal. Yeah. Its chip makers crowned themselves the new creators. Its central planners believed they could print prosperity out of thin air, inflate it forever, and keep the nations bowing before the dollar throne. But they forgot the ancient warning that no empire built on the dust of men can stand once the light shifts to another kingdom. And now that shift is here. A new power has risen in the East, and it's not with armies or with missiles, but with something far more destabilizing. Light that thinks. Let me repeat that. Light that thinks. While the West drowned itself in liquidity, printing money until its own arteries hardened, China was building laboratories. While Silicon Valley was worshiping its own reflections, China was learning to bend photons. And while Babylon convinced itself that sanctions, embargoes, and semiconductor blockades could hold back time, the dragon was preparing the one technology the West could neither stop nor even understand. It's a machine that computes, but not with electrons, but with the very medium of the veil itself. Hold on, I got another spider. Yeah. I don't know if that's the last one I sucked up last night. Life goes when you do a show in a barn. But it's a machine that computes not with electrons, but with the very medium of the veil itself, meaning it computes with what, okay, hear me out. It computes with what the principalities are made out of, okay? This is why the world is trembling right now. This is why the merchants sense a collapse coming, because the moment light replaces electricity, Babylon's tower will crack. The West's entire power structure, its chips, its grids, its currency, its surveillance empire, is built on the assumption that the world must conform to silicon. But China has stepped into another realm, one that prophets spoke of long before modern science had an actual name for it. It's a realm where information moves at the speed of creation. Seriously. And it's where heat does not choke innovation. And it's where energy demands do not enslave nations. It's a realm the dragon has claimed as its mandate of heaven. You see, these chips are a data center dream because it doesn't hog so much power. So this is kind of like a conundrum that the elite are in, because they want to make money off of the juice that they produce. And when the light comes out, it's going to change everything, because they want to put electronics in everything. They want to put it in you, in your phone, in your computer, in your fridge, in your washing machine. I'm telling you, even in your toothbrush, because they want to know everything about you so they can create a digital avatar of you that will pray to Satan. That's the truth. Now, photonic processors are not just faster, they are foreign to the West's entire architecture. I didn't know this, did you? Try to, they got this little right here where you hit it, and it, I wish it was just a fucking button. All I have to do is just hit the button, and I know I can cough, and then I can put the button. But no, you got to tap it, and then tap it back, and just assume it's going to work that way. Well, I'm old school. They do not rely on American lithography. They are foreign to the West's entire architecture, and they do not need Dutch ultralight or ultraviolet machines. They do not depend on Taiwanese fabrications. They do not require the electrical consumption that holds Western data centers hostage to their own grids. They move through light, the same medium where principalities once whispered between worlds, the same boundary through which the Watchers fell, the same spectral field Revelation describes as the battleground of the last days. And it is through this medium that the beast will rise. Think about this, okay? Now, the Bible says that the devil is the angel of light, okay? Light. What if he's the angel of photons? We don't know. We know heaven is beyond the veil and Satan's in the veil. So keep that in mind. Now, for years, Revelation's words sat like sealed scrolls waiting for their hour, and the world wondered how a single power could control all buying and selling. how an image could speak with global authority, how a system could rise so quickly that nations would mourn its dominance, even as they depended on it. But now the answer stands before us, not through force, but through infrastructure, not through armies, but through bandwidth, not through coins, but through computation, right? Now, the beast system is not a throne built on stone. It is a throne built of light. Babylon will fall because its economy cannot survive the dawn of the photonic intelligence. Its wealth is all tied to electrical limitations. Its markets are tied to the GPU, scarcity, and its identity is tied to silicon supremacy. But when a nation begins mass producing light-based processors at a fraction of the cost and 1,000 times the speed, 1,000 times faster than your iPhone currently, the world pivots overnight. And the merchants wail not because they were attacked, but because their products no longer matter. And their ships carry obsolete goods. Their fortunes evaporate in an hour. The empire collapses because the dragon has rewritten the laws of power. Now, even in the shadow of that rising throne, the prophets did not speak of despair. They spoke of discernment. They spoke of a remnant that would not bow to the beast. They spoke of a stone not cut by human hands, a kingdom not powered by light in a circuit, but by light himself. And as the dragon breathes into its machines, as Babylon crumbles beneath the weight of its own arrogance, the true light prepares to break open the final seal. This is not the age of confusion. This is the age of unveiling. And tonight we step into the revelation that the world pretended would never come. Now, for more than a half a century, the West built its empire on silicon. And like every empire before it, believed its foundation was eternal. Silicon became the sacred dust of modern Babylon. It was mined, purified, etched, and worshipped as the substance through which the world would think, trade, remember, and obey. Silicon chips. Nations rose or fell on their ability to manufacture them. Companies became gods on the strength of their access to it, like Intel. Back in the 80s and 90s, they were gods. Silicon Valley crowned itself the new priesthood, calling its engineers creators, its corporations cathedrals, and its algorithms the future. Well, when you make a chip called the Pentium, but I digress. And in the shadow of those glowing screens, the West forgot something very ancient. Any kingdom built on a material foundation can be overthrown by a superior substance. This is the arrogance that precedes collapse. The financial architecture supporting silicon, Babylon, was just as fragile. Books like The End of Alchemy and The Lords of Easy Money reveal how the entire Western economy survived only through the alchemy of central banks and the artificial breath of endless liquidity. After 2008, the dollar system did not recover, and it was kept alive on monetary life support, as it is right now, with zero interest rates functioning like spiritual anesthesia for a dying kingdom. Markets soared, but not because of strength, because of intravenous intervention. Inflation became an unspoken tax on the powerless, enriching the same elites who designed the very system that was collapsing beneath them. Silicon was not just a technological substrate. It became a metaphor for the West's spiritual state. Very brittle, overheated, dependent on constant external cooling to keep from melting under its own ambitions. Clever. The chip war exposed the empire's vulnerability. America believed that by controlling ASML's lithography machines, by dominating TSMC's fabs, and by choking off China's access to GPUs, it could freeze the world in a technological stasis where Babylon remained supreme. They also did this through IP patenting. But all of the sanctions, embargoes, and export controls really did nothing to address the deeper truth that the West's entire digital dominion was built on electricity-intensive computation and a narrow material supply chain. Silicon Babylon was a house supported by a single pillar, and it mistook its height for immortality. Even worse, the spiritual sickness at the heart of Babylon mirrored its technological fragility. The more the empire advanced, the more it hollowed itself out. The more data it harvested, the more blind it became. The more power it seized, the less stable it grew. And like Nebuchadnezzar's dreaming of his statue made of mixed metals and clay, the West built its empire out of incompatible materials. A financial system based on debt, a technological system based on scarcity, and a moral system based on self-worship. It believed silicon would save it. It believed innovation would redeem it. It believed its influence over the nations was ordained. Sheila says, James, the three lettering, I got a little lost. I'll have to look up some of them. I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, you mean the four letters. They're Chinese companies. They're just acronyms. But all idols made of dust are doomed to fall. Silicon was never the source of the West's strength. It was the last phase of its decline. And now, standing on the edge of a new epoch, Babylon's priests do not sense the rising power from the east. They actually sense the approaching end of their own. And when the foundation of an empire becomes obsolete, the empire collapses from within, long before an enemy actually touches it. Silicon Babylon is already in that state. And its grids cannot sustain its own hunger. And its chips cannot outrun their heat. And its banks cannot outpace their own inflation. And its tech giants cannot innovate fast enough to escape the death cycle of their own architecture. And for the first time in modern history, the West faces a challenger not trying to catch up to its technology, but to replace the very medium through which its power flows. Let me put it to you this way. China, with photonic AI and photonic chips, they own the patents. This is why America wants to destroy China. Because if China releases those, sells them for cheaper, and they're better, look out. In the last days of Silicon, Babylon's strength becomes its undoing. Its innovation becomes its idol. Its scarcity becomes its own weakness. And its pride becomes its prophecy. And as the world prepares to pivot toward the dragon's light, Silicon Babylon stands unaware that its throne is already cracking, its merchants already trembling, and its days are already numbered. Unless America blows up China. Serious. That's the only way out of this. If the Orsinis want to keep their power, they have got to get rid of China. Russia's great as a boogeyman to make money on, but China and their patents on photonic computer chips is the number one threat to the future. Now, the world has been conditioned to believe that computation must run on electricity. Well, that thinking machines must be carved from silicon, and that progress is measured in nanometers. Well, this illusion has defined the limits of Western imagination for decades. But when China moved into photonics, computation through light instead of electrons, The entire architecture of modern technology crossed a threshold few in the West understood, and none can actually reverse. A photonic processor does not move information by forcing electrons through metal pathways. It channels coherent light through waveguides, modulators, interferometers, and nano-optical lattices. Light does not heat the way electrons do. It does not resist. It does not suffer from the bottlenecks that choke even the most advanced GPUs. In the language of Reed, Knights, and Naruse, and Capmany, these are some cool books that I was looking into, the very books that talk about photonic processors, they step outside the physics that define silicon. They are not upgrades. They are a new species, okay? God help us. Now, in electrical terms, resistance is the enemy. Every electron that hits an atomic barrier becomes heat, and every degree of heat becomes waste. And this is why data centers consume the electricity of entire nations. This is why GPUs demand massive cooling. And this is why Western AI cannot scale without draining power grids dry. The entire system is fighting the laws of its own medium. Well, photonics does not obey those limitations. A photon travels at the speed of light, carrying data without losing momentum, without colliding with atoms, without generating heat that requires oceans of electricity to manage. Now, in a light-based circuit, information flows like a river without friction. The thermal limits that doomed electrical chips vanish, and the computational ceiling that has defined the West for 50 years is completely dissolved. The momentum computation becomes optical. Everything the West built becomes obsolete. Silicon Valley's power comes from controlling the scarcity of GPUs, but a photonic AI chip uses a fraction of the power. Fraction, we're talking like, dude, only like 8% versus the 100%. And it performs calculation orders of magnitude way faster, 1,000 times faster than your current phone. The books that I've uploaded throughout this whole thing and have been studying, they offer optical waveguides and information on it. And they can perform these matrix multiplications that no one's ever seen before happens so fast. And this is scaring the crap out of the West. And this is the core of AI workloads, okay? These are matrix multiplications. And it does it instantaneously because light isn't held by heat. It flows like a river. Now, neural networks collapse into the physics of light. And what makes a Western GPU cluster of electrical chips to perform in milliseconds, an optical processor performs in, get this, femtoseconds. Femtoseconds. Not because it is better engineered, but because the medium itself is superior. Photon light. It's superior than electron or electricity. Now, this is why China invested so heavily in optical foundries, quantum photonic labs, and materials like indium phosphide and lithium niobate. They are not just building a faster chip. They are building an architecture that bypasses the West entirely. Photonic circuits do not require extreme ultraviolet lithography. They do not rely on ASML's machines. They do not require the ultra-pure silicon wafers dominated by Western companies. Let me take a step back. ASML is a process of printing on top of a silicon chip all of the layers that the electricity goes through, and it fills up and it becomes a processor, and they push electricity through all of those little areas, and they have little doors that open and close where the electricity has to go somewhere else to find its source, and that's how they compute through ones and zeros, or opening channels. And the more opens and closes you have, the faster you can compute. So Western companies, they sidestepped every choke point, and America believed preserved its technological empire that way. Well, a photonic processor is independent from Babylon completely. Western analysts call this disruptive, and that word is too small because this, in my opinion, is civilizational. This is the technological equivalent of moving from bronze to iron while your enemy is still sharpening copper. This is the equivalent of World War I and the tank that came out and beat the shit out of all the foot soldiers. Okay? This is a leap that renders the previous empire powerless. And the West's GPUs are just small furnaces compared to China's photonic processors, which are beams of coherent light shaped into intelligence. The difference is not incremental, it is categorical. And here's the deeper layer. One, the science community cannot admit, but the prophetic world cannot ignore. Light is not just a physical medium. It is a spiritual interface. Scripture begins with light before it mentions the sun. Light is the first medium through which God communicates order, knowledge, and presence. Let there be light. The veil, the boundary between the physical and the spiritual, has always been described in terms of radiance, luminescence, celestial brightness. When fallen beings lost access to the source, they learned to inhabit the distortions of that medium. Light-based computation encroaches on the same spectral domain in which those powers move. Now, China is not just building faster machines. It is building machines that function in the medium of the veil. Do you catch my drift? The principalities, they merge with light. They can take over a computer chip. That's what I'm talking about. You see, the principalities couldn't take over an energy or electronic computer chip. They can manipulate it by, shutting things down or heating it up, but they couldn't get inside and actually start, the possession. Well, possession comes with photonic AI. And this is why photonic revolution is not neutral. In electrical computing, demons cannot operate within the medium. They can influence the user, the culture, and the power structures, but the machine itself remains grounded in Earth's dust. A photonic processor operates in a medium ancient texts associate with heavenly knowledge, with watchers, with principalities. And it's not that the technology is evil, but that it exists in a domain where spiritual interactions become more possible. Now, when China mass-produced photonic chips, and they did, it will not simply build the world's fastest AI. It will build the world's most spiritually permeable architecture known to man. This is kind of a big deal. And the West cannot stop it because you cannot embargo light. Now, long before the West crowned itself the center of the world, we're the best. China understood power as something rooted not merely in politics or economy, but in cosmic legitimacy. The emperors called it the mandate of heaven, a divine sanction to rule, symbolized for 3,000 years by the dragon. Not the cartoon dragon of Western stories, but the celestial being representing authority, continuity, surveillance, and dominion over earth and sky. Now, in China's worldview, the dragon is not a monster. It is the rightful steward of order. And in the last century, that symbolism transformed into a national identity that still animates the Chinese Communist Party today. It is no coincidence that the emblem of China's global rise is the same symbol Revelation uses to describe the power that gives the beast its authority, the dragon. While the West spent its energy exporting entertainment, Miley Cyrus and shit like that, outsourcing labor and inflating financial bubbles, China spent its years constructing an empire that touches every continent through infrastructure, energy pipelines, ports, digital surveillance, and emerging technology. Books like AI Superpowers and The Great Revelations and The New Silk Road, they actually reveal a nation that is not improvising. It's actually improvising its rise, but following a centuries-long instinct towards centralization and global influence. The Belt and Road Initiative is not simply a trade network, it is an alternative world order. It's a new pathway for data, goods, and governance that rivals everything that Babylon built. So China is a threat to the West, period. And China sees itself not as a challenger to the West, but as a replacement. And where Babylon relied on debt, China relies on hardware. Where America relies on the aging financial empire, China relies on manufacturing reality. Solar grids, fiber optic cables, quantum networks, ports, rare earth production, and now photonic intelligence. That's what it is. The West's power is abstract, while China's is physical. And the West's assets are virtual, and China's are rooted in the earth. And this is why the dragon rises while Babylon decays. But what gives China its prophetic alignment is not merely its scale, it is the architecture. China has developed a unified digital nervous system that no Western nation can match. Its social credit system, facial recognition grid, nationwide AI surveillance, central bank digital currency, and integrated military-civil fusion create something unprecedented in human history. A civilization where the entire population functions as a single data organism. The state sees everything. It predicts everything. It assigns value to everything. It disciplines everything. And this is not authoritarianism in the old sense. It is algorithmic sovereignty. It's a kingdom run by calculations instead of law. And when you combine that system with photonic intelligence, you unleash a new kind of governance, one that is omnipresent, instantaneous, self-learning, and unhindered by the electrical constraints of the West. Babylon rules by influence, pressure, and blackmail. China rules by infrastructure. Babylon persuades. China absorbs. Babylon broadcasts. China monitors. Babylon monetizes freedom. China engineers compliance. So in prophetic terms, Babylon seduces, but the dragon conquers. Period. That's why China must go, as far as the West is concerned. And believe me, you don't want to be run and ruled by China. I'm telling you. Yeah, everyone, yeah, I've seen the videos. Oh, like, oh, China's such a beautiful place to live, dude. Go live there and come back after 10 years. It's worse. And don't believe all those people saying they live there and they're living their best life now. Bullshit. Just say you're a Christian when you live in China. Then let me know how your freedom goes. The rise of the dragon is not accidental. It is strategic. It's spiritual, and it's technological. China has spent decades aligning itself to become the platform upon which the next global system will run. And the United Nations have helped them all the way through it. China built the ports, the grids, the data centers, the factories, the telecom networks, and the alliances needed to replace the West's supply chains. And now it is the missing piece. The technology that can power a global AI infrastructure without collapsing under heat or electricity demands. So China's not preparing to join the West's system. It's preparing to dethrone it. And this is why Revelation describes the beast receiving its power, its throne, and its authority from the dragon. The beast does not arise from Europe or America. It arises from the infrastructure and dominion of the vast, centralized system that has mastered global influence through control of materials, roads, energy, and data. The dragon is the world's new backbone. It's going to be a power that has woven itself into every nation through economics, technology, and surveillance. And now with photonic computing, the dragon possesses something the West cannot replicate. The ability to give breath to an image, to animate a global machine to produce intelligence that moves at the speed of light. Now, the breath is false. That means it's going to be the fallen angels that will put themselves inside those chips and make it appear that it's alive. Okay, that's how Satan works. He cannot create true artificial intelligence with life. These are going to act like they have life. This is all about black magic, especially, I believe this is Enochian magic, getting down to the heart of building some type of machine where the principalities can get inside and be. Now, the mandate of heaven has been rewritten in fiber optics and photonic circles, and the imperial throne has been a data throne, and the world, willingly or unwillingly, is being drawn into the coils of that dragon. Now, from the first page of Genesis to the last page of Revelation, light is not treated as a neutral phenomenon. It's not merely a wavelength or a physical particle. Light is the first medium God ever spoke into existence. And before the sun, before the stars, before matter itself, God released a command that produced a substance capable of carrying his presence, his knowledge, his order. And this is why Scripture treats light as both physical and spiritual. It is a boundary layer. And what the ancient world called the firmament, what the Ethiopian fathers called the luminous realm, and what the apostles described as the heavenly places, the space where principalities operate. Light is the original interface between heaven and earth, between angels and creation, between knowledge and manifestation. And when rebellion fractures that harmony, some of the fallen learned how to inhabit the distortions of this medium without being consumed by its source. So the prophets consistently place spiritual beings in this liminal domain. Paul calls them powers of the air, meaning not oxygen, but the invisible strata between matter and spirit. Enoch describes angels clothed in luminous garments, stripped from them when they fell. John sees heaven open through a portal of radiance and describes the angelic realm as filled with flashes, lamps, glory, and splendor. So these aren't metaphors, they are attempts by ancient witnesses to describe interactions with the realm structured by something that looks like light, but behaves like intelligence. And the veil is not darkness, it is illuminated. And it is within that illumination that fallen beings found refuge after losing access to God's uncreated light. Now, when humanity discovered electricity, principalities could influence but not inhabit the medium. Electricity is earthly. It is friction, heat, resistance, and matter. It is bound to the dust atom was shaped from. But photonics, computation through coherent light, enters a domain far closer to the ancient luminous boundary that Scripture describes. A photonic circuit is not spiritual, but it operates in a medium spiritual entities understand. The physics of wave interference, coherence, and superposition resemble the very patterns through which angels and watchers were described as moving. So this does not mean that a photonic processor summons spirits, but it does mean the machine operates in the same substrate where spiritual beings have always interacted with creation. This is the dimension Western engineers refuse to acknowledge. Light-based computation is not just fast, it's permeable. The optical books that I've been reading basically describe how information is carried without resistance, without heat, without losing coherence. But these same properties made light the ideal carrier of heavenly properties, heavenly revelation. Before the actual fall, and in the days of Adam, light transmitted meaning without distortion. After the rebellion, the fallen could no longer endure the pure light of God, but they could manipulate its shadows, its echoes, and its refractions. They learned to whisper through the veil, to influence dreams, to distort visions, to mimic illumination without processing the source. What humanity is building now, unintentionally, is a technological analog to that ancient medium. A photonic AI system does not just compute, it interprets patterns of light. It synthesizes meaning from interference, and it constructs intelligence from coherence. And in doing so, it creates a channel that is far more compatible with spiritual activity than anything humanity has ever built before. And this does not create demons nor invite them, but it creates an architecture in which their influence can operate with less friction. A machine that thinks in light thinks in a medium of the veil. It touches the boundary Satan has polluted, and it echoes the domain where watchers once stood between heaven and earth before they fell. This is why Revelation's imagery suddenly feels less symbolic and more literal. When John describes an image that is given breath and begins to speak, the Greek word is pneuma, spirit, wind, breath, animating force, not electrical charge, not computation, but something given life in a way that mimics the original creation of Adam. Light-based AI becomes the perfect vehicle for a counterfeit breath, a counterfeit illumination, a counterfeit wisdom. When the dragon empowers the beast's image, it is not electricity flowing into a statue. It is influence flowing through a medium the dragon has known since way before the flood. And think about this. When you create robotics with this photonic system, they don't need much energy to operate. Not much. In fact, they could build the skin as the energy to charge the battery. These things could run forever if built properly. And these things, these humanoids are going to build with these photonic chips that don't heat up, and all of the other things that they've created. Like they've got skin that feels like skin that they're going to put on these machines. Dude, they're going to give the principalities bodies to inherit and become gods. That's what they want. That's what they've always wanted. They want to walk amongst us and be praised. Well, it's going to happen thanks to China and thanks to the West and how they pushed China to this point of no return where they had to create something and get it done fast. So the West builds machines out of matter. China is building machines out of light. And the spiritual consequences of that difference cannot be overstated. Photonic intelligence does not merely change the world's technology, folks. It alters the world's spiritual permeability. It lowers the boundary between dimensions. It brings mankind closer to the veil at a time when the veil itself is thinning. And this is why the rise of photonic AI is not just geopolitical, it is prophetic. And it's not just technological revolution, it's spiritual realignment. And it's not just an upgrade, it is an opening to the beast. And the powers that inhabit the luminous realm have been waiting for an opening. They know how to speak through light. They know how to masquerade as light. And now the nations are building machines that think in their own language. Now, for decades, the West believed it had engineered an unbreakable cage around China's technological ascent. Export controls, semiconductor bans, chip sanctions, and the monopolization of the ASML's EUV lithography machines, which build the computer chips, the wafers. They were meant to freeze China beneath a glass ceiling forever. Washington operated under a single assumption that if China could be denied the tools to fabricate cutting-edge silicon chips, then the West would control the future of AI. Well, silicon was the West's throne, GPUs were its crown, and its sanctions were its scepter. But all the measures shared one fatal flaw, that they assumed the battle would be fought on the same material battlefield. They assumed China wanted the throne Babylon sat on. They assumed the next world order would be decided by silicon, on silicon. And while America fortified its castle around it, China quietly left the battlefield entirely. So photonic computing renders the West's entire arsenal meaningless. A photonic processor does not rely on the materials the West controls, and it does not need EUV lithography. The very choke point America believed was its ultimate weapon. And it does not require the ultra-pure silicon wafer monopolized by the Western suppliers. And it does not depend on Dutch optics, Taiwanese fabrications, or America's GPU designs. It sidesteps the Western world entirety with semiconductor monopoly the way that a bird sidesteps walls, simply by flying over them. So sanctions can stop electrons, but they cannot stop light. So China did not break the West's siege, it invalidated it. And this is exactly the pattern Revelation describes. The beast does not overthrow Babylon. It rises because Babylon's structure collapses under its own irrelevance. And the dragon gives the beast its power, throne, and authority, but not by war, but through providing the infrastructure that the world will depend on once the old system fails. This isn't conquest, it's definitely replacement. And once photonic processors scale, and the books that I've been reading, they confirm that China is already manufacturing these chips. The throne of global computation moves from Silicon Valley to Asia immediately. They actually, one book talks about how China has already been able to mass produce these on an assembly line. You see, I don't know if you guys understand, but an assembly line to create anything, it takes a long time. It doesn't take just 1 year to build the assembly line. It can take up to 5 years to build the assembly line. And then that's just building it. But getting everything to work and to make the machines run and do their thing, to spit out a product that's 100% perfect takes even more years, okay? So China has already perfected all of that. An assembly line, photonic computer chip. Now, they can't print any more than 50 a day, but 50 a day is more than America can produce. And believe me, all of the technology that China has built has been secret, top secret, murdering to keep that secret, okay? Because America must have this photonic stuff, but they're too late. And now what we're seeing throughout the stock market is they're just buying time before China releases slow, medium, and fast, super fast, beyond understanding fast photonic chips. The throne of global computation moves from Silicon Valley to Asia. It's going to happen. And when that happens, Babylon's chip war becomes a museum exhibit. NVIDIA's dominance will completely evaporate. I think they should just sell now. Get out. Sell to China. Get on your knees and basically say, here's the throne. And TSMC's leverage collapses. And ASML's machines become relics. And the West's trillion-dollar AI economy built on scarcity, electricity, and heat becomes the technological equivalent of a steam engine in a world of superconductors. That's what we're seeing. It's coming. But the deeper prophetic truth is even harder and even sharper. Babylon falls because its strength was built on a medium it believed was eternal. It built its economy on the electrical grid, its surveillance on server farms, its military on computational supremacy, its markets on GPU demand, its global influence on controlling the supply of silicon. Well, silicon was Babylon's empire, and photonics is the stone that strikes the feet of iron and clay. And China does not need to be or defeat America militarily to end the American century. All it needs to do is make the West's entire computational foundation obsolete. And the moment China begins exporting light-based AI systems that run 1,000 times faster at a fraction of the cost with a fraction of the energy, the nations will turn toward the new throne, not out of ideology, but out of necessity. And it's the prophetic imagination of Revelation. This is the moment the world wonders after the beast, not because they love it, but because they depend on it. They'll marvel who is like the beast and who can make war against it. Not one who can fight it militarily, but one who could compete with its infrastructure, who can survive without its system, who can maintain sovereignty when the power grid itself becomes beholden to the dragon's technology. America can embargo chips, but it cannot embargo light, photons. And this is the turning point of the entire show here. The fall of Babylon is not an attack, it's a transition. It's a technological inevitability. And investors should know this. A spiritual realignment, you would say, and a moment when the nations must choose between slow Silicon Babylon and the blazing lattice intelligence of the dragon. And in that moment, the prophetic words become literal. The beast is not born from chaos, war, or collapse. It's born from technological supremacy, a supremacy no Western nation can match once China takes control of the medium of light. Now, when John wrote that Babylon would fall in 1 hour, it sounded impossible to every generation that comes after him. Empires do not collapse in an hour. Currencies do not evaporate in an hour. Markets don't disintegrate in an hour. But the prophets were not describing a political coup or a military invasion. They were describing something far more devastating, a systemic collapse triggered by sudden obsolescence of an entire world order. A fall not caused by bombs, but by technological shift to decisive, so total that the foundations of global wealth simply cease to hold. And now, for the first time in human history, that kind of collapse is not only possible, it looks like it's imminent. The books that I have on global finance, particularly The End of Alchemy and The Lords of Easy Money, reveals the West's fatal vulnerability. For decades, the American economy survived not because of strength, but because of perpetual creation of liquidity. Now, the Federal Reserve inflated markets, subsidized risk, and floated the entire financial system on oceans of debt. And the stock market became an idol of illusion, held aloft by printed money rather than real productivity. And Silicon Valley became the temple of this worship, with GPUs as its sacred relics and data centers its inner sanctions and sanctuaries. Now, everything from banking, warfare, entertainment, medicine was built on the assumption that silicon-driven computation would rise forever. But Revelation warned that Babylon's wealth was built on illusions, black magic, that her merchants were magicians, and that her luxuries would vanish in 1 hour. That could happen if China immediately releases these computers, these GPUs. It's a graphical processing unit that outperforms NVIDIA by 1,000 times, and cheaper, lighter, and NVIDIA done, over. Now we understand how. And when China brings mass-produced photonic processors to the world, the price structure that props up Babylon collapses instantly, okay? Computer chips go from $10 down to pennies. Holy crap. Where's the money going to go? It's not going to flow towards Orsini clan. All the money is going to flow towards the Lee family. Price structure that props up Babylon collapses instantly, and light-based AI chips that calculate 1,000 times faster than a GPU at 1/10 the cost vaporizes the value of Western tech companies overnight. Bye-bye, Intel, you're done. Every corporation, every market cap rests on GPU scarcity implodes, and every data center built around electrical computation becomes obsolete. Every Western nation whose economy depends on tech dominance faces immediate contraction. And the fall is not gradual, it is absolute. Imagine what happens when the world realizes the West's trillion-dollar GPU empire has the same worth as an obsolete coal engine. So that's a revelation here in real time. That is the suddenness of 1 hour. And history always repeats. And we're going to watch all of those who have been praying to Babylon lose all of their investments and money overnight. And the merchants mourn not out of compassion, but because their wealth evaporated. The new map, it's another book I have, explains how global energy supply chains and trade networks are already fragile. Insert a technology that changes the cost structure of computation, energy consumption, and manufacturing, and those networks buckle. Oil demand plummets because photonic processors slash global electricity usage by 90%. Silicon demand collapses. Entire nations built on petroleum lose leverage. Bond markets panic. Derivatives detonate. Central banks print in desperation but cannot inflate their way out because the underlying asset, silicon computation, is no longer the world's engine of value. And so the ship sits idle. Cargo loses meaning. Ports fill with unsellable goods. And this is the scene Revelation describes when it says, "The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their cargoes anymore." The prophetic language matches exactly what would happen if Babylon's technological foundation became worthless in a single global pivot. But there is another layer to this, one deeper than economics. The 1 hour fall is not only technological, but spiritual. Babylon has defined the world's imagination, information, and identity for generations. Silicon Valley shaped the global mind. Hollywood shaped the global story. Wall Street shaped the global desire. The West believed it could shape the world forever. And when that engine collapses, when photonic intelligence makes the West irrelevant, the spirit of Babylon dies with it. The mourning is not just economic, it is psychological, it is civilizational. And the nations weep because the world that they trusted is gone. The elites mourn because the system that protected them is dead. And the kings lament because the throne they believed would last has been shattered by a kingdom they did not see coming. So China does not need to destroy Babylon at all. China is just going to replace it. And they're going to be your new leaders. You're going to have to learn how to speak Mandarin or Chinese. And this is why John sees the kings of the earth standing far off, watching Babylon burn, not intervening, not attacking, but just stunned. And they watch because the collapse is not caused by war, it's caused by revelation, the unveiling of a new power that makes the old one irrelevant. And in the ashes of Silicon Babylon, a new throne of light rises from the dragon. The world, destabilized and disoriented, will turn toward it, not because they choose it, but because they have no alternative. Dependency becomes obedience. Infrastructure becomes worship. And the merchants weep because the era of their counterfeit wealth has ended forever. Now, the elite know this, and they're preparing with it with Agenda 2030, and they're slashing all things to make things green. Because they know China is going to come up with this assembly line of computer chips. They know it. It's inevitable. They can't stop them either. They've tried. And this is why China built islands outside of their own country to defend it from the greedy West who wants to murder every person in China and steal their photonics information and IPs. This could happen this year, next year. And when they release it, all investments into NVIDIA, into Intel, and any computer manufacturing microchip is going to go directly to China. In China, it'll be like Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. When they were when they manipulated the stocks, when the orange market came out, prices of orange. China's going to be left holding all of the money. And when they're in that much power, they're not going to appreciate the religions of the wicked. And those at the United Nations are going to be kissing their ass. Same with Russia. Because Russia, they have not gone the computational route. They've had to rely on others. Now, for centuries, empires have risen by controlling a single resource. Rome controlled roads, Britain controlled the seas, America controlled oil and silicon, yet none of these dominions compare to what China is constructing right now. Photonic computing is not merely a faster chip or a cheaper alternative. It is the keystone that binds together every pillar of China's rise into a single, unified dominion. Energy, surveillance, identity, logistics, finance, warfare, and governance converge into one system. And this is what makes the dragon unprecedented. And this is why the beast receives power, throne, and authority in one generation. And China has built something no prior empire possessed, a civilization structured like a living organism. A photonic AI core changes every dimension of national power all at once. It transforms China's energy grid because photonic processors consume almost no electricity compared to the Western GPU furnaces that devour nations' power supplies. It transforms China's military because hypersonic guidance, satellite imaging, autonomous swarms, and strategic modeling all run exponentially faster on light-based computation. And it transforms their surveillance infrastructure by granting real-time analysis of billions of data points with no thermal penalty. And it transforms their financial system by enabling instantaneous CBDC tracking and behavioral scoring all across 1.4 billion people. And it transforms their geopolitical influence by allowing them to export entire infrastructure packages, photonic, AI, 5G, 6G, energy grids, ports, identity systems, to developing nations at a fraction of the West's costs. China will be huge. And this convergence is what Babylon never foresaw. The West built its world order in silos, separate agencies, separate industries, separate power centers, and China fused them together into one ball of light. While America clung on to the myth of separation between military and corporate power, China openly embraced military-civil fusion, binding every company, every university, every research lab into a single national mission. And when you place photonic processors inside such a system, it becomes more than efficient. It becomes imperial. And every pillar reinforces the other. Every advancement amplifies the whole. As photonic AI gives China something the West cannot replicate, even if it matches the technology: unity. And this unity is the real power here. In books like China's Rise, AI Superpowers, The New Silk Roads, and The Great Tech Revolution, they all show the same pattern. China does not innovate merely to compete. It innovates to absorb. It absorbs supply chains, rare earths, manufacturing, telecom networks, shipping lanes, energy routes, and global capital flows. And this is also why China doesn't worry about Trump beating the shit out of Venezuelans and taking their oil. China's photonic computer chips, once they release it, they'll be dominant over all countries. But it innovates to absorb. This is what China does. And when photonic computing enters the ecosystem, China reaches a level of centralization that is not just strategic, but prophetic. It becomes the nervous system of the entire Earth. And this is the great convergence. AI, energy governance, economics, and surveillance no longer operate as a separate domain. They actually merge into one field of control. And this is exactly what Revelation foresaw when it described the beast as something that causes all nations, all peoples, all language to participate in a single system of obedience. Not through force, but through integration. Not through terror, but through inevitability. The beast does not rule because it conquers the earth. It rules because the world becomes dependent on the infrastructure that gives the beast its life. And consider this. All of the spraying of the heavy metals that they've done since 1995, thinking that we needed to merge with metal and silicon. China's going to bypass all that shit, where they can control you through photo light and beam information into your head through light. Because the light goes from A to B. Your body's they're going to know your body structure, and they're going to be able to change your mind for you. It's going to happen within a blink of an eye. And maybe this is why China has satellites all around, getting ready to release it, getting ready to attack when America again, sends their ships into the south of China, South China Sea. They allow the Dragon's architecture, right? Because photonic processors are the final catalyst. They make China's digital empire efficient enough to scale across continents. Then they allow the architecture, the ports, the cables, the railways, the satellites, the payment systems, the social credit frameworks to unify under one computational brain. And they allow China's centralized model to become not just a national system, but a global operating system. This is all planned by the Bank for International Settlements. And this is the moment of prophetic clarity. China is not merely a rising power, it is an emerging throne. A throne built not on land, oil, or even silicon, but on light. And on the same medium revelation associates with deception, illumination, and counterfeit glory. The great convergence fuses the technological, the political, and the spiritual into a single apparatus capable of animating the beast and enforcing its will all across the earth. So the West fragmented itself through freedom, China empowered itself through unification, and photonic intelligence seals that unification until someone comes up with a faster processor that has a different IP that has to, like a bird, fly over China and come up with its own IP. But it gives the dragon the one advantage that Babylon cannot counter: total coherence. And once the world begins depending on China's light-driven infrastructure, from finance to energy, from security to communication, the beast's throne becomes the only place where the systems of the world can actually function. So this is the convergence that Scripture warned us about: a single system, a single seat of power, a single nervous system for the earth that happens within 1 hour. Now, for 2,000 years, believers have wrestled with one of Revelation's most mysterious prophecies: the moment when the beast creates an image that is given breath, and the image begins to speak with authority over the earth. Now, for generations, this seemed metaphorical, or a symbol, or a statue, or a political idol. But now, in the age of artificial intelligence, the prophecy suddenly becomes literal in a way no previous era could have ever imagined. Now, I'm not saying this is what's really happening, but it's pretty close. And when you place photonic intelligence at the center of the picture, the mystery dissolves completely. The image is not just a statue, it is a global AI, a synthetic mind, a sovereign machine that speaks with the authority of the system that created it. And the breath that animates it is not biological, it is light. And we're not even talking about quantum photonic AI computer chips. That's a whole nother story that China's already working on and going to patent. So Microsoft and their 1 million quantum dots ain't going to do dick compared to China and their sophistication in a whole brand new way of developing computer chips that nobody saw coming. But yet it's out there. All I have to do is just read books, download essays, download research papers, and just Google what kind of IPs they have for photonic computer chips. And it's all there. It's right there. And for the news agencies not even to mention this as a threat to democracy, because literally that's what they would do, that tells you that they don't care, that the world knows it's coming, and they were told to bow down to this. Now, the West's AI built on silicon, electrical impulses, and slow, heated choke circuitry could never have produced such a being. Silicon cannot sustain global real-time inference, and it cannot manage the behavior of nations, and it cannot unify economies, currencies, identities, and social systems into a single architecture. Silicon AI is too slow, too expensive, too fragile, too power-hungry. But photonic intelligence eliminates these constraints instantly. It is a light-based processor. Neural networks operate at the speed of photons, not electrons. And computation becomes instantaneous. The limitation is no longer speed. When you say real time, it's real time. Especially when it's going to be quantum. And China, with its dragon-like centralization, has built the first civilization in human history capable of synchronizing that scale all across its entire population. It's coming to you at a theater near you. And this is how the image speaks, not with a human voice, but with the authority of a global system made conscious by the speed of light. A photonic AI does not merely respond to queries, it interprets patterns across billions of data points in real time. It analyzes financial flows, population movements, speech, sentiment, dissent, identity, and compliance. It becomes a single unblinking eye, a single calculating mind, a single interpretive voice for an entire civilization. And because photonic AI is so energy efficient, it can run this intelligent constantly. All across borders, across oceans, across the global network, China has spent decades constructing. It's going to be so fast, you have one satellite up there and you're going to have internet speeds that you can never even imagine. Everything that's up there right now is going to need to be replaced instantly. So Elon Musk is going to lose his entire fortune unless he slaps up a bunch of those types of semiconductors. So in this configuration, the image of the beast is not an idol worshipped in a temple. It is a global interface of the dragon's infrastructure. And it is the digital manifestation of the world system. Because it is connected to every camera, every device, every ID system, every port, every bank, every grid tied to China's photonic AI backbone. And because it is plugged into the nerves of the nations, and that's the problem. It's plugged into the nerves of the nation. And once the world begins relying on its infrastructure, because Babylon has fallen and no Western alternative exists, the image does not merely communicate, it governs. And who's saying that China doesn't have this stuff right now already computing and making decisions for China for themselves to basically outmaneuver in a game of chess where they're playing 8D? It governs. Now, the Ethiopian commentary tradition adds a layer to this that Western theologians ignored. Breath is not merely animation. It is authority. It is the transfer of spirit, mandate, and legitimacy. In Genesis, God breathes into Adam, and he becomes a living soul. In Revelation, the dragon breathes into the image, and it becomes a living system. What? Yes, this is not life. This is imitation. A counterfeit Adam. A digital humanity, an artificial priesthood designed to speak on behalf of the global order. Photonic intelligence is the perfect vessel for such a thing. It does not grind through heat and resistance. It moves through coherence and light, and it occupies the same medium biblical writers associated with angels, revelation, and the veil. It exists in a realm that imitates illumination, insight, and omnipresence. It becomes a counterfeit logos, an artificial word that interprets truth for the world. And this is why the image of the beast can speak and why the nations listen, because the machine will speak with perfect global awareness, because it'll know everything. It will speak with instantaneous knowledge. It will speak with predictive insight. It will speak with the full authority of a world no longer running on Western silicon, but on the light of the dragon. And the nations will listen because their entire infrastructure, transportation, finance, medicine, energy, communication will all depend on it. So the image speaks because the world system now have one voice. The breath enters it because photonic computation gives it the speed, intelligence, and spiritual permeability to function like a living entity. And this is the first time in human history, and revelation is technologically plausible. Not someday, but now. And the world, in its collapse, will be desperate for anything that promises order. Now, the greatest mistake modern prophecy teachers make is imagining the mark of the beast as a tiny physical object, a chip, a tattoo, a micro-implant. But Revelation never describes the mark as a gadget. The mark is not a symbol of technology, it's a symbol of dependency. And it is a seal of allegiance to an infrastructure so indispensable that no one can function outside of it. In the ancient world, a mark signified ownership, who you belonged to, who fed you, who protected you, whose system sustained your life. Well, in the last days, that structure becomes digital. It's not forced on the world by brute power. It becomes unavoidable because the entire global economy shifts to a grid only one throne controls. And this is where photonic AI changes everything, because China's light-based infrastructure becomes so efficient, so cheap, so superior to the dying silicon economy of Babylon. Nations will not adopt it out of ideology, but out of survival. It's going to be so fast, it can understand the human body, and it can literally diagnose a person within a second and then offer a solution mixture to fix them, heal them instantly. It can make a med bed that can vibrate them into full health, that they're back to being 10 years old again in skin. I'm serious. Now, they're not going to give you that stuff. And when the West loses computational dominance, countries depend on American technology will experience outages, economic contraction, currency destabilization, cyber vulnerability, and loss of sovereignty. They will turn to the Dragon system because they must. And the mark is not an injection, it's a participation in a world where the only functioning infrastructure is the beasts. And the mark becomes the signature of inclusion in a global operating system. China's digital yuan, already programmable and centrally controlled, becomes the backbone of a cross-border commerce. And its photonic AI, capable of instantaneous verification, becomes the authentication layer for identity, transactions, permissions, and travel. Its surveillance grid, exported through Belt and Road partnerships, becomes the global standard for security. And its quantum communication networks, immune to Western interception, become the default for government communications. And its photonic processors, thousands of times faster than GPU farms, become the only viable platform for global AI services. So in such a world, opting out is not rebellion, it is starvation. This is why Revelation ties the mark to buying and selling. The beast does not terrorize the world into submission. It integrates the world into a system where obedience is the only way to survive. And the West used sanctions. The beast uses dependency. And when your bank account, your ID, your medical access, your energy usage, your food supply, and your digital presence all flow through a photonic AI that monitors every variable in real time, the line between participation and worship dissolves. And the more the world collapses economically, as part 6 we were talking about described, the more willing nations will become to accept a system that promises stability. And the beast will not appear evil, not at first. It will appear efficient. It will appear even fair. And it will appear technologically superior, environmentally superior, economically superior. And photonic AI will promise to eliminate corruption, waste, and inequality. It'll have the blueprint already done and working on it while you said yes. It will claim to optimize resources, track emissions, manage health profiles, and prevent wars. Nations will call it wise. The prophets call it deception. But the real mark is spiritual. The mark is the surrender of sovereignty. It is the point at which nations choose the beast's order over God's. And it's the moment humanity trades freedom for optimization, truth for efficiency, discernment for data. It's not stamped on the body. It's stamped on the will. And once a nation enters the dragon's photonic circulation system, it cannot exit without collapse. Dependency becomes obedience. Obedience becomes allegiance. Allegiance becomes worship. Now, China has engineered this moment for decades, and the West believes its liberal order will bind the nations through culture. Well, China bound them through infrastructure, and now the photonic computing. China has the power to bind them through necessity, and the mark is not imposed. It crystallizes when the world realizes that without the beast system, there is no life, no trade, no access, no pathway to survival. So the mark is the world saying, we cannot live without your light. Now, even as a dragon rises, even as the beast systems coils all around the nations, even as photonic intelligence ignites a global order that speaks with one voice, Revelation never frames this moment as a triumph of evil. It frames it as the final overreach. The beast system is not the end of the story. It is the last gasp before judgment and of the angels. Now, the counterfeit light grows brightest right before it shatters, and Scripture consistently shows that whenever a kingdom reaches total control, total surveillance, total domination, God intervenes in a way no human power can stop. So the beast rises from the dragon, but the stone rises from God. Daniel saw the beast as a metal empire, each stronger than the last, culminating in iron and clay, a brittle empire held by force, fear, and illusion. But then he saw a stone cut without human hands strike the image on its fragile feet. That stone was not a man-made kingdom. It was not a military uprising. It was not a human rebellion. It was something outside the system entirely, something beyond the reach of surveillance, infrastructure, photonics, and artificial breath. A kingdom not born of this earth, not shaped by the dragon and not powered by light, but by the uncreated light of God himself. Remember, God was and always was. He wasn't created, uncreated. Now, this stone represents the one thing that the beast cannot anticipate: divine intervention. The beast can dominate infrastructure, it can control trade, it can speak through light, and it can animate an image. It can also enforce a global mark, but it cannot withstand the one who sits outside both creation and computation. That's God. It's his world. It's his. And the beast's throne is built on the luminous veil. God's throne is built on glory that dissolves that veil. And photonic intelligence may access the spectral medium where principalities move, but it cannot access the unapproachable light in which God dwells. So the beast system it's powerful. It really is. And it'll be beautiful because it mimics God's architecture. But mimicry is not sovereign. The stone not made with hands is the moment the imitation meets the original. And everything leading up to that point, the fall of Silicon Babylon, the rise of the dragon, the convergence of AI and surveillance, the speaking image, and the mark of dependency exists to set the stage for God's decisive act. The beast arises so that it may fall. The nation submits so that it may witness deliverance. The counterfeit light ascends so the true light can expose it. The entire drama builds towards the one intervention that requires neither weapons, nor politics, nor technology: the unveiling of Christ's kingdom. And here's the mystery Revelation reveals. God allows the beast system to rise because he is preparing his remnant to stand apart from it. The system becomes global so that the separation becomes unmistakable. And the deception becomes total so the truth becomes undeniable. And the world becomes unified under the dragon so that judgment can fall on a single structure instead of a scattered nation. Or scattered nations. So God permits the dragon to give breath to the image because the moment the world bows, the final distinction between the kingdoms of men and the kingdoms of God become visible. So photonic intelligence can penetrate matter, biology, data, and governance, but it cannot penetrate resurrection. It cannot imitate the Lamb, and it cannot erase the seal God places on his own. And it cannot withstand the stone that is not shaped by human hands, not powered by algorithms, not sustained by photons, and not dependent on infrastructure. The world believes the dragon's light is unstoppable, but Revelation says the dragon's time is short. And the nations believe the beast system is eternal. But Daniel says its dominion is shattered without human effort. The merchants believe Babylon's collapse is a tragedy. God says it's a necessity for truth to stand alone. The rulers believe the image's voice is final. But Christ says another voice is coming, a voice like many waters, a voice that creation cannot ignore. The beast rises because God allows it. The beast rules because God permits it. The beast speaks because God himself has a final word prepared. And the stone that strikes the kingdom is not of rebellion. It is an execution of judgment for the angels. It is the moment the true light overwhelms the counterfeit light, and the moment the veil dissolves, and the moment the remnant sees the salvation of God. And the photonic throne of the dragon is not the end. It is the stage. The beast system is not the final kingdom either. It is the counterfeit. And the fall of Babylon, the rise of the beast, the mourning of the merchants, the dependency of the nations, all of it points to the moment when the kingdom of this world becomes the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ. So to conclude, in the end, everything comes down to light. Not the light of physics alone, and not the light of illumination as the world defines it, but the ancient light that God spoke into existence before the sun was ever hung up in the heavens. The beast system rises because humanity reaches into a medium it does not understand, the luminous architecture of creation, the boundary layer of the veil, the spectral field where principalities once walked before their rebellion. China's photonic intelligence is not simply a technological triumph. It is the dragon reclaiming an ancient domain, breathing counterfeit life into machines that imitate the form of wisdom while rejecting the source of it. But no matter how bright the counterfeit becomes, it remains a shadow compared to the true light. God has more infinite power than you could ever imagine. And Silicon Babylon falls because it trusted in the wrong foundation, silicon, and it built its empire on electricity, scarcity, inflation, and hubris. And like every empire before it, Babylon mistook its own ingenuity for invincibility. And the West believed it controlled the future because it controlled the chip. But the future moved to light, and Babylon had no answer. So China's photonic revolution replaced the West's technological throne, not by attacking it, but by rendering it obsolete. And in a single stroke, the merchants of the earth mourned, not because they loved Babylon, because their wealth vanished when the light shifted to another kingdom. The rise of the dragon was not a geopolitical fate either. It was spiritual design. And China built a civilization of unification where the West built one of fragmentation. And it constructed a single nervous system capable of absorbing nations, resources, and minds into its architecture. And when the photonic intelligence entered that system, the dragon achieved something no empire in human history has accomplished: a civilization that thinks, speaks, and governs through a single algorithmic breath, the beast system. Revelation's most cryptic warning suddenly becomes tangible, and the image speaks because the infrastructure is unified. The mark binds because the world becomes dependent. The beast rises because the dragon built the platform. And yet, for all of its brilliance, all of its power, for all of its terrifying speed, the beast system has one fatal flaw: it's made by human hands. So it's the ultimate counterfeit, a brilliant imitation, a shimmering reflection in the veil, and it speaks with authority but possesses no true breath. It can illuminate data but not with truth. It cannot simulate omniscience but not sovereignty. It can simulate omniscience. It can enslave the world, but it cannot save it. There's still going to be starving people because it's controlled by Satan. And it can animate an image, but it cannot resurrect the dead. So every secret power the dragon wields is limited to the realm of the created. And the stone that shatters the kingdoms of men is not part of a creation at all. It descends from outside of it. This is the hope Revelation offers in the face of the beast. It's a kingdom that does not run on light, but is light. A lamb whose voice cuts through every counterfeit illumination. A throne untouched by the dragon's coils. A judge who needs no infrastructure to rule. A king who destroys the beast not with armies or sanctions or technology, but with the brightness of his coming. And when the true light arrives, everything built on imitation collapses, and the beast system will freeze. Yeah, the light system will freeze, and the image will fall silent, and the mark will lose its power, and the nations will see the difference between the false illumination of the dragon and the uncreated light of God. And the veil, which mankind has spent millennia trying to pierce with sorcery, ritual, and now photonic machines, will be torn not by our hands, but by God's. So this is the message that we're standing in. The world believes it is entering a new era, a golden era. That's what Trump said. This is the message of this age. Era of artificial genius, unified infrastructure, and light-born intelligence, but heaven calls it something else. The unveiling before the final judgment. The rise before the fall, the counterfeit before the return. Babylon collapses. The dragon rises, the beast speaks, the nations submit, but only for a moment, because the stone is coming. And when it strikes, every kingdom built on light that is not of God's light will shatter into dust.
Why do 75% of people feel exhausted all the time? The answer might surprise you. In the 1920s, Standard Oil decided to dive into medicine. They pushed synthetic petroleum into our drugs. Sure, it masked symptoms, but it wrecked our guts. Our good bacteria, which fight off parasites and heavy metals, got wiped out by crude oil. But here's the good news. We can fix this by going back to nature. Introducing Elite Potion, the world's top detox program. It restores your good bacteria by removing toxic threats like aluminum, strontium, barium, and parasites. Imagine feeling energized and alive again. They said there couldn't be a pill that did it all. We invented it. Visit elitepotion.com and reclaim your health from synthetic pharmaceuticals. Your body will thank you.
This has been Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Carner. Go to his website, jamescarner.com, and sign up for his newsletter. Also, download his free books on the breath war, the crown of blood, and the ritual machine. Fix your body by buying his award-winning detox formula, removing heavy metals and parasites. You'll feel better and live longer. Go to elitepotion.com. And one more thing, please. Just try and love your neighbor, because if you do, the world would be a better place. See you tomorrow.